First of all, welcome to the channel and thank you for stopping by. When time permits, please consider subscribing. I would greatly appreciate it. What we're going to look at in this video is a conversation I had with everybody's favorite light ADV rider, ADV Matt. This year, we've seen two new bikes announced, them being the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 and the Ibex or 450 MT from CFMoto. In addition to those announced and coming bikes, we also have all the spy shots and rumors and the inevitable replacement for the KTM 390 Adventure. I had the opportunity to sit down with ADV Matt, the go-to source for light ADV, and discuss these upcoming bikes. What we think of the announced bikes, what we think of the shots we've seen, what we think of the articles, and how they might fit into what is obviously a growing segment of market, light ADV. I hope you enjoy this. I really enjoyed sitting down with Matt and having this conversation.
I think the next bike is something of great interest to many of us looking at the small adventure bike, and that is the CFMoto 450 MT. Now, their CFMoto is working closely with KTM on their motorcycles. They have a lot of agreements. They're making engines for them, doing some manufacturing. So I expect that this engine should be a pretty solid engine. It's already out on one of their street bikes. It's a parallel twin in a small compact form is very popular. The CB500, which is also a parallel twin, is a very popular bike, which I think the CFMoto is going to be more of an off-road version of the CB500. They're very similar in weight. They're very similar in power. But the CFMoto, what they've done with this 450 is added traction control, TFT, connectivity, 2118 tire setup. I mean, that speaks off-road. That speaks adventure travel, BDRs, and it's tubeless as well. So that also they're taking a look at where the market is and what we as riders are looking for. Another note that I wanted to bring up with this particular engine is the compression ratio. The compression ratio on this bike is 11.5 to 1, so that engine should last a really long time. To give you a comparison, a KTM 890 is 13.5 to 1. That's a high compression ratio, which typically you expect high compression ratio engines that wear a little bit harder. And with the lower compression ratio, maybe that engine, you'll get 60, 80, 100,000 miles out of it if you take care of it. Suspension travel around 8 inches. I think that's about what we're going to see out of the small bikes. I think another interesting thing that they've done is a rising rate on the rear suspension, which is like with the KTM, the Tenere 700 has a rising rate suspension, and there's a lot of benefits in that. Rising rate and the small bump compliance, it's a very high leverage ratio, so that moves a lot more, and then as it goes through its stroke, your shock is going to stiffen as that rate changes, so it makes it feel a lot better, and it gives more tunability. And then out of the small adventure bikes, it's going to have the highest torque too, so it should make it a lot easier to ride, slower, in more challenging terrain. Now, weight-wise, I think it's speculated to be around 420 pounds, which for a parallel twin, that's pretty dang good. And then you add in all the extra connectivity and 8 inches of travel. This is a very appealing bike. What are you thinking, Frank?
I'm thinking this is the best bike released in 2 years and the best bike that will be released in the next 2 years. What most people are asking for, and obviously I'm exaggerating a little, but we want a Tenere, but we want it smaller. We want a 790, but we want it smaller. We don't want to compromise, we just want it to be lighter and more nimble. And I think CFMoto is delivering that bike. As you said, it's going to have the twin. It's going to be smooth. It looks like it's built from the ground up to be a touring bike that goes off-road. It looks like the bike that you're going to get if you want to be able to commute to work, but you want to be able to ride the BDR. that you want to be able to do 500 miles and then do 500 miles off road. I'm shocked this bike is coming out. I'm terrified of what this bike is going to cost because it really is what you get put in an adventure bike. Only we made it a little smaller and lighter. Do you want it? And it's like, yes, I do. And I think there's going to be so many people that say, you know, ADV Matt is insane for riding that single cylinder that far. They're going to say, but wait, this one's a twin. I can go without the vibration and go farther more comfortably. That's not to say you can't get on the shakiest single cylinder in the world, the KLR, and ride to Alaska, because somebody's doing it right now. 1,000 people have done it in the past 2 years, but it's not that comfortable. I owned one. It's not great. I think CFMoto is like, all right, fine. You guys want a small bike? We're going to give it to you. And we're going to give you all the accoutrement that you expect in a bike today. It's not stripped down. Like going back briefly to the Royal Enfield, it has a lot of bells and whistles, but I don't expect it to ride like anything but a Royal Enfield. Rough around the edges. I expect it to be like a big paint shaker when I'm going down at highway speed. But with this, looking at it, they've been making road bikes that people love for years. They've had a very high success rate with their engines. They've had a fairly good success rate with their partnership with KTM. Let's be honest, CFMoto doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. They're building half of what KTM makes. They've got KTM's technology, they've got their own technology, and they've got the biggest manufacturing in the world. This bike has an opportunity to be what most people want, except for it's got a Chinese brand on it, and that is going to put some people off. But I think that, like the 800 version of their adventure series, I think they're throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at it to try to say, you wanted it, we gave it to you, let's overlook the Chinese brand, go buy the bike, it's what you want.
I think they've even taken this bike a step further, because if you look at the 800, it's heavy. It's heavier than the KTM, and the power production is lower than the KTM bikes, and it's essentially the same engine, I think, because in the 790. They've taken a leap here by making a much lighter bike that really fits in this market. It has all the off-road, at least on paper, it has the off-road chops in it. Now, one of the things that we're just not going to know until we get a chance to throw a leg over it is, how's the weight balance on it? You know, how does it feel? The seat height doesn't seem to be too bad. I think it also, I'm not sure if I wrote that down, but I think it also is coming in around 32 inches, which still is very approachable. And with all the connectivity ride modes, they've really pushed the envelope of what we can do, or what they can do with these small adventure bikes, and are throwing everything at it. And I want to say that it might be due to the success of the 390 adventure. And I'm not sure that KTM was expecting the 390 adventure to do as well as it has, and seeing that and what riders want has pushed CFMoto to do more. And then also, you know, KTM was planning to bring out the 490, which we were all very excited about, the small parallel twin, and they didn't. They canceled that. Perhaps CFMoto saw that opening and saw that there was a lot of interest in it, and are filling it with their. So I am really excited about this bike. I'm looking forward to seeing, getting a leg over it and trying it out.
Honestly, I do not believe the CFMoto would exist without the 390 Adventure. The Royal Himalaya probably would not be as good on paper as it is looking at it right now without the 390. The only thing similar before this, something that gave you reasonable weight, reasonable power, was the DR650 from 1,000 years ago. And that didn't convince anyone else to produce a bike. I think that the 390 hit so well worldwide. It sells in Europe, it sells in India, it sells in Asia, it sells in the United States. I'm fairly certain that we're getting an actual segment of small adventure bikes because that bike came out. And I say that because it didn't exist before it, and now it's getting pretty full. And the only difference is there was finally a successful bike. The Honda 500, it never really caught critical mass. No one ever started to develop that into an ADV bike. No one ever made other ones. It was the 390 that kicked it off. And I think CFMoto is getting into everything. If there's a market for it, CFMoto is going to make a bike for it. And wow, it's a nice one.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. The 390, the most common comments that I get is either from riders riding big bikes that don't want to ride big bikes anymore, maybe because they're getting older, or they're just tired of wrestling the big bikes and they went to the 390. And then you have people coming in that were new riders and picked up the 390 and have experienced riding from that standpoint. So you're hitting multiple market segments that the big bikes are not going to hit, and it's an approachable bike. It's not an enduro bike. It's capable of doing long distance if you want to do it. So you're right. There wasn't anything before that. The CB500X looks good on paper, but has no ground clearance. If you really want to do anything off road, you got to buy a $3,000 rally raid kit to change the wheels and the forks and the shock, and you don't want to spend another $3,000 on a bike that you're already spending $8,000 on. Just to get it set up, just to get off road. So yeah, they've really, I think the CFMoto is hitting that it's adding to that market area what we want even more than what the 390 Adventure was, with the wheel setup, tubeless, more power, parallel twin, I mean, all those things. So I'm very excited about this bike. I think we're going to be like the rest of, like all other bikes released, we're going to be the last to see this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. The United States is the last market almost from every manufacturer. I mean, there are times where we don't see Hondas and Yamahas for 2.5 years. And in some cases, we don't even get them. We were
Yep.
excited to get the Tenere 700 3.5 years late. And people don't even realize they sold the Tenere 660 for like 6 years and never even bothered to give it to us.
No, they never brought it here. Well, and the Tenere World Raid, at least saying right now, it's never going to make it to the U.S. is the last thing that I had read. They're coming out with the newer version of the Tenere, but the World Raid's never going to make it. Which I'm not sure why they don't bring it to the U.S. market. Maybe we're a bit harder on the bikes than other markets. I don't know.
It's puzzling, but I'm grateful that CFMoto and Royal Enfield have been bringing their bikes here. As you said, we're not going to get them right away, but they've been really good about bringing them here. I think we waited 1.5 years for the 800 MT, so that's not too bad. You know,
No,
if we get the CFMoto within calendar year 25, that's not bad at all.
no, I agree with you, because I don't think we're going to see the new 390 Adventure in 25. I think maybe 26 for us here. And I think the other thing where CFMoto, at least my understanding, and I need to look this up later, but they have a decent dealer network, especially because they have a lot of ATVs, and the ATV market there. I see CFMoto signs all over the place when I'm traveling, coast to coast. So I think the dealer market might even be better than like Royal Enfield, which also makes it more appealing. If you have service you can't do on your own, or you need to get parts.
Here in upstate New York, I can go 30 minutes to one CFMoto shop and an hour to another CFMoto shop. If I want to get my Aprilia worked on, if I were to go get an Aprilia, it's 3.5 hours to the closest place to get it worked on.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, they're beating a very large brand already. Like you said, they have the power sports. They've already got partnerships. They already have power sport people that know how to work on their engines. They already have contracts with these power sport places. I mean, the CFMoto sign has gone up. I drive from New York to Tennessee on 81, and you'll see all the power sports places. They've got a CFMoto on there. There's a guy that is trained to work on CFMoto products. I think when their bikes drop, there's a remarkably good dealer network and shops available.
The other thing I want to say about the CFMoto bikes is they are very price competitive. The 800 is priced remarkably well. They're smaller street bikes priced remarkably well. I think the new 450 MT is gonna beat the other bikes that we're looking at, or probably come in right around where the Royal Enfield is, and that is a lot of value for the money. It will have the reliability that we want, and it rides the way we hope it does once we get a chance to ride it.